hospital peoples. Welcome to our first ever cooking demonstration for Employee Appreciation. I am your host, Damian Esposito, Executive Chef. Today, we're going to be preparing some grilled cheese and tomato soup. We're going to start the tomato soup with a little bit of butter. And we're going to add just a little bit of garlic to it. Now, this iconic sandwich, the grilled cheese and the tomato soup, started not too long ago. Even though there are recipes listed in Roman texts and the French had something called a croque monsieur, our modern day grilled cheese didn't start until roughly around the 30s when James L. Kraft invented processed sliced cheese, and Otto Frederick Rohwedder invented sliced bread. The two married, eventually ended up in a very famous cookbook, The Joy of Cooking by Irma Rombauer, where the sandwiches were fried in butter in a skillet. The tomato soup comes from a recipe book called The Kentucky Housewife by Lettice Bryan. She had in her cookbook over 20 recipes for tomatoes. Later, Joseph Campbell invented condensed soups, realizing that it would cost less money to ship soup that needed water to be added to it later. And we have tomato soup canned. In World War II, the Navy started combining the two, serving grilled cheese and tomato soups to our servicemen abroad. And then it was later adopted by schools as an excellent source of protein and vitamin C. Now our butter is melted and our garlic is just getting cooked. So now we're going to add about an ounce of flour to our ounce of butter. And we're going to stir it around until it looks like wet sand. What we're making here is called a roux. Now we want to cook this roux a little bit. I can start to smell the garlic. And when the roux cooks, we'll get a little bit of a nutty smell from the flour. That's how you know that it's cooking. I'm going to add a little more butter to this. If you're not going to measure your flour, add just enough flour to the butter that it looks like wet sand. Again, we're going to stir it around so as to not to scorch. I can smell it. Kind of smells like toasted peanuts. You can see once it starts to bubble, that's actually the water coming out of it. Now, speaking of water, we're going to add about 1.5 pints of water. And then we're going to add some tomato product. Now, the tomato products we have, we're going to start off with some tomato paste. About 3 ounces of paste. And we're going to turn our burner up a little bit to about medium. We have some tomato puree. About 3 ounces of that. We have a secret ingredient of ketchup. We're just going to add a little bit of that. We're going to stir that around nicely until it all mixes. Now you can add a lot of different things to tomato soup. You could add fresh basil. You could add dill. I added garlic. Something my grandmother used to add was a little bit of star anise. And the star anise has a unique flavor of licorice. It's very similar to fennel or tarragon. which you can add tarragon as well. Tomato soup is very nice because it accepts a lot of different fresh herbs in it. Chives, you can add spinach and rice to make it a little heartier of a meal. I'm going to add a little more paste. When I cook at home, I don't really use a recipe a lot. I cook by feel, by how it looks, how it smells, and how it tastes. So in looking at this, it looks thick, but it also needs heat. So I'm going to let that cook a little bit. And I'm going to start on a basic grilled cheese. Now, there's a lot of ways to make grilled cheese. The most famous one is the one I mentioned in The Joy of Cooking, in which it is fried in a pan with butter. Many people will do it open-faced. Both sides of the sandwich are open to the top. You can spread the butter on your bread first and then put it in the pan, which is an excellent way to do it. You can also melt the butter in the pan before you lay down the bread, which is how I like to do it. You don't have to use butter. You could use olive oil if you're looking to reduce those saturated fats. But you're going to take 2 pieces of bread after you've got a nice buttery skillet, and you're going to lay them right down like that. And today I'm going to use cheddar. I'm going to turn my heat up to a medium. And we're going to let that cook. You want to watch your bread very closely because it can get away from you, especially with these electric stoves. I'm turning the heat down on my tomato soup now. Stirring it. We're going to add some flavoring to our soup. I have a little bit of salt and pepper, of course. We're going to add a little bit of sugar. We're going to add that star anise. That is star anise. See the star? I'm going to stir that in nicely. Now it's got a pretty nice thickness. I feel like it could hold the cream. So we're going to add a little bit of cream to it. You can use milk. You can use 2% milk, skim milk. You could even use almond milk if you like. And it turns a pretty orange color. Now while that's cooking, I'm going to turn it down to about a 3. We're waiting on our grilled cheese sandwich here. I'm going to check underneath to see if it's browning. Now, the nice thing about grilled cheese is you can do that a lot of different ways too. You can add bacon to it. You could add spinach. You could add tomatoes, ham, turkey. You can broil them in the oven if you don't feel safe with a pan. Just lay it on a sheet tray, open-faced. Put it on broil on low. Make sure you watch it because it will go fast. So while we're waiting for this grilled cheese, I'm going to start another one. I'm going to do one on rye bread. We're going to add olive oil this time. We're going to add some pepper jack cheese. I'm going to add a little bit of bacon to it. because bacon makes everything better. Am I right? And we're going to add some avocado. Hopefully the good fats in the avocado will cancel out the fat in the bacon. My cheese is nice and melty on our first sandwich, and our soup is pretty close to being done. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. It's not quite brown enough. It's always nice to cook things nice and slow. Sometimes the more time it takes, the better things turn out. My soup is bubbling nicely. I like the thick consistency. There's nothing like a good, hearty tomato soup on a cold day. I'm going to flip our sandwich over. It's starting to brown better. I'm going to go ahead and flip my bacon and avocado sandwich over. Now, while we're waiting for that, we could probably start on a salad. Because all this cheese and soup, sometimes I like some greens to wash it all down with. Now, when I usually make a salad, I usually start with the dressing first, especially if I'm going to make a vinaigrette. Now, the key to a good vinaigrette is to make sure that it emulsifies. So we're going to use a little bit of Dijon mustard. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, some vinegar, and we're going to whisk that up. And we're going to add a little bit of tarragon to it. Because remember, tarragon does well in tomato soup. It'll do great in your garden salad as well. Going to check on our grilled cheese. Oh, yeah, that looks good. We're going to pull off our first grilled cheese here. Back to our vinaigrette. We're going to add about 2 parts oil to the 1 part vinegar. So if you've got about a tablespoon of vinegar, you want about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You want to whisk it together. So that it emulsifies. In other words, I don't see any separation of oil and vinegar. It should hold and it should stay emulsified for at least a few minutes. I'm going to turn our stove down. Check on our tomato soup. I think we're going to drop a couple of tablespoons of butter in our tomato soup just to give it a nice shine. Smells good. Now for our first tomato soup, we're going to add a little bit to this bowl. We're going to cut our grilled cheese into grilled cheese croutons, which we're going to garnish our soup with. It doesn't always have to be the same every time. You can plate it a little bit differently. Add some fresh garnish. And that can be our first grilled cheese. Now, while we're waiting for that, let's do another grilled cheese. I've got some whole wheat bread. Again, this time we're going to use nothing but olive oil. Around my house, we use a lot of olive oil. Turn this down a little bit. We're going to add some pesto. Pesto is a mixture of ground garlic, Parmesan cheese, and basil in olive oil. Sometimes it has pine nuts added to it. It's an excellent way to get a lot of flavor. So we're going to spread that on the bread. And we're going to add some fresh mozzarella. And then we're going to add a couple of tomatoes. And we're going to add some fresh basil. And while that's cooking, we're going to finish our salad. My dressing is still pretty emulsified. So now we're going to add some greens. I like to add a little bit of iceberg to my greens. Keep it nice and crunchy. They have a good water content. We're going to add some tomatoes. I like to cut my tomatoes in half. We're going to add a couple of cucumbers, maybe a little bit of carrot, a couple of sliced mushrooms, and we're going to mix that around. Now we're going to come back to our bacon and avocado grilled cheese, and we are going to plate this with a real nice sour cream and dill potato salad. We're going to use the tomato soup as a sauce. And we're going to set our grilled cheese up just like that. Maybe add a little parsley to it. And that's our tomato bacon and avocado grilled cheese. And it is served with a sour cream and dill potato salad. And again, the tomato soup is a sauce, a nice dipping sauce. Now for our final presentation, we're going to add our soup. We're going to add our salad. Making sure we get all of those great vegetables that we added to this salad. The nice thing about a vinaigrette is it cuts right through the cheese and the cream in the soup. It's kind of a palate cleanser. We're going to check on our grilled cheese. Wheat bread gets a little darker than some of the other breads, but it still makes a great grilled cheese. And that is our tomato, basil, grilled cheese with tomato soup and salad. And that's it. Grilled cheese 3 ways. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Damian Esposito, Executive Chef, asking you, how do you grilled cheese?